President, please be seated. The court is back in session and the floor is given to the defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume his line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Madam Witness. Before the break, we were speaking about Ing Tarit. You testified that you don't really recall any conversation with her. But your daughter worked at the Ministry of Social Affairs. Maybe your daughter spoke to you about conversations that she might have had with Ing Tarit. But my question is, do you remember directly or indirectly coming from Ing Tarit actions of sabotage in the northwest zone? Rebellious troops stealing rice, taking it away from the cooperatives. Did you at that time ever hear such a story?
Answer: I do not know about the killing. I do not know about the killing in that province.
Maybe my question wasn't clear, but I was speaking about stealing of rice, taking away rice away from the people, but storing it in rice mills, for instance, to keep it for rebellious troops in the northwest zone. Have you ever heard something like this?
Answer: how could I know the affairs in Eastern Zone and Northwest Zones? We had different tasks to perform. No one discussed these tasks in those districts.
I understand. Let me ask questions then relating to your district. I have here in front of me a document, a telegram, E3/952. It's a telegram that your husband sent to Pol Pot on the 2nd of April 1976. And he talks about events in your district, Chamkarlu district. And ERN, Mr. President, English 00182658, Khmer 00000766, and French 00350762 up until 3. I will read to you what he wrote, your husband wrote to Pol Pot, and then I ask your reaction. He talks about the enemy situation in the entire North Zone. He says that the enemy has fundamentally not yet conducted any strong activity, but, and I quote, specifically, some activity has appeared in Chamkarlu district. The enemies are former soldiers in combination with the Cham and former cooperative team chairman. They used copies of a photo of Lon Nol and Nol's announcement of 18 March 1970 to post on tree trunks near Trapeng village in Chamkalu district, and conducted other activities like burning forests and destroying crops like bananas, papaya, etc. Madam Witness, do you remember enemy activities in your district, such as forces burning down forests and destroying banana crops and papaya crops?
Answer. I do not know about the burning of the forests. It's happened a long time ago. I forget it. I could not get information on all those matters.
I understand, Madam Witness. In this same telegram to Brother Paul, your husband addresses the problem of fever and diarrhea among people in the zone. And on the same ERN numbers as just mentioned, he writes that the reason, and I quote, the reason is due to working and overheating, due to when working and overheating, the brothers and sisters were drinking cold water, not drinking hot water regularly. So after signaling this problem, he then writes to Brother Paul, and I quote, "The measures taken were to raise the principle of reducing work hours according to goals set by the party, pushing political and ideological training, and having the brothers and sisters be determined in drinking hot water as well." Does this problem, as described by your husband, ring a bell? Did this happen in your district as well? And do you recall anything about the suggested solution?
Answer. My apology. I cannot have the full graph of information. Once again, my apology. I do not recall it. I did not pay any attention to that matter.
No problem, Madam Witness. I'll move on to more general questions on the food situation and resting time, etc. You gave an answer to an earlier question that the purpose of the 1st January dam was to block the water, and it had a purpose of irrigation of the rice fields. Was the ultimate goal of the dam to raise the people's standard of living? Was that what the dam was ultimately about?
Answer. I understand that the construction of the 1st January dam was to help improve people's livelihood. That's what I can say.
You also testified that you and other female cadres went to Phnom Penh regularly to attend education sessions led by Nguyen Chia. Do you remember whether in these education sessions he spoke about the ultimate goal of building socialism in democratic Kampuchea being to raise the people's standards of living quickly? Is that what the main threat of his education session was about?
ចាខ្ញុំទទួល
Answer. The education was related to the affairs that I had to perform. It happened a long time ago. I am sick, so I forget what I experienced in that period. I joined and attended the meeting, but I could not remember all the details discussed in that meeting.
I understand, Madam Witness. Maybe if I give you some very, very concrete examples that would jog your memory. For instance, do you remember Nguyen Chia speaking to you and your female cadres about the working and resting regime within democratic Kampuchea? For instance, that the workers needed to have 3 days of rest per month. For instance, between 10 and 15 days for rest in order to visit people or to study. Do you remember concrete measures as to the working and resting regime of workers?
ចាខ្ញុំ
Answer. I have answered repeatedly. I cannot remember the content of the education sessions. I cannot recall it.
So if I give you some very concrete practical examples, you think that won't jog your memory?
Answer. I could not recall it.
មូល
Why? There were problems with my memory, and I also have until now. So it is difficult for me to give my answers to your question because I cannot recall it.
Let me try one more time and give you a concrete example in relation to women and children. Do you know whether during these sessions Nguyen Chia spoke about a mandatory 2 months rest for pregnant women?
Answer. For pregnant women in cooperatives, there was a regulation to be applied by those pregnant women. They had 1 month or 2 month arrest, and after delivery, women could have 2 month rest.
And in relation to children, do you remember Nguyen Chia speaking about a policy to organize child care centers in the various bases?
Answer: I have no idea. I may have forgotten it. I cannot find the answer for you because I cannot recall it.
I understand. A very last example of what might have been said during these education sessions. Do you remember Nguyen Chia speaking to you and your female cadres, your colleagues, about materials necessary for the people, such as mosquito nets, blankets, pillows for sleeping, material which was seen as very important for the people in the cooperatives?
Answer: Nguyen Chia organized those materials in districts, and as for cooperatives, the sector would send the materials to the districts. I did not receive any instruction, Nguyen Chia's instruction about materials. District and sectors were the ones who received instructions from Nguyen Chia about those materials.
You testified earlier that you perceived the food situation in your district as decent, as proper. Do you recall any guidelines from the center in relation to rations of food for different categories of workers? Or is that something that you don't recall either?
Answer: I'm telling the court that I cannot recall it.
Madam Witness, I would like now to read a quote to you from someone who I will identify later. And this quote is about the food situation in democratic Cambodia between 75 and 79, and most likely also in relation to your district and your sector. I will read this quote to you, and then I will ask you if you agree with this quote. Mr. President, I'm quoting, I would like to quote from a document E3/7333, also known as E307/5.2.17, just before the break referred to as the Pineapple Book. There's no Khmer translation, and there's no French translation. English ERN is 01002277. It's on the bottom of page 156. And Madam Witness, the quote is as follows. Yes, the population works hard, very hard. But they are not unhappy. On the contrary, they laugh. And the food in the cooperatives is not bad. Not as good as my food in Phnom Penh, of course, but it is food. It is the real truth when I say the people are well fed. End of quote. Do you agree with this quote?
President, please hold on, Madam Witness. You may now proceed. International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm afraid the question is objectionable. It's straying beyond asking a factual question to this witness to asking for an opinion. There's no indication that this statement had anything to do with the district or cooperatives of this witness. So counsel here is just asking for opinion testimony. There's no factual basis for putting this statement to this witness.
I'm not asking her opinion, Mr. President. I'm asking whether the quote that I just read out reflects her experience in regards to food situation in her cooperative. So I think I'm entitled to confront this witness with this particular quote and ask whether that is indeed her recollection as well.
President, the chambers allow the witness to give the answers to the question, and the objection by the co-prosecutor is overruled.
Madam Witness, the quote I just read, is that an accurate description or is it an incorrect description of the food situation in DK or your sector or district?
Answer. I knew only the tasks that we did in the district. The living condition was decent and proper, and the living condition corresponded with the work that people do.
So would you agree with me when I say that you agree with the quote, that the quote that I just gave you reflects your recollection as well?
President, you may repeat your question or rephrase your question. It appears that your question is a leading one.
Madam Witness, I just read out to you a quote from someone. Is the content of this quote in accordance with your own recollection in regards to food situation.
Answer. I already answered that question. The livelihood and living condition in my district was decent. So what else could I say?
Fair enough, Madam Witness. For the record, Mr. President, I was quoting late King Father Sihanouk during his press conference in January 1979 in Beijing, China. Madam Witness, some last questions about working hours at the dam site. Do you recall at one point in time a message in one of the revolutionary flags about the problems of workers working in the nighttime?
Sorry, can't realize she can't read.
Well, there seems to be no translation also.
I just wanted to point you to the fact that she cannot read.
Well, I read in her statement that she reads a little bit, but let me rephrase. Madam Witness, do you remember ever heard, maybe at the education sessions which you attended, that there were problems in relation to working at nighttime, and that working at nighttime should be limited as much as possible?
When I attended the meetings, workers did not have to work at night, and that's what I learned through the meeting.
Another question in relation to the working hours at the dam. Do you recall whether the starting of the work, the morning breaks, the lunch breaks, and the ending of the working session was the same for all the workers, for all 20,000 workers at the 1st January dam site?
As I repeatedly told you, I did not know exactly about the working hours. You can consider that I was simply a visitor to the work site. And that mainly was my role when I went to the dam site, and I could not tell you about the working hours.
Thank you very much, Madam Witness, for your answers. I am finished, Mr. President.
President, thank you. The Chamber now hands the floor to the defense team for accused and pawn, and you may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. Madame Susong, my name is Antagise, and I am the international co-counsel for Kisampan, and I will put a few extra questions to you with relation to your testimony. I, first of all, would like to obtain clarification with regard to the your social background or the social background of your parents. Is it true that you come from a family of farmers?
Yes, indeed. My husband was originated from a farming family, and the level of education was also limited, so we were purely peasants.
And your husband and yourself come from the same region? Is that where you met?
Yeah.
Yes, we came from the same district, but different villages.
And you said that you got married in 1958, and that it was only in 1976 that you were appointed to work in Chamkalar district. Is that correct?
Maybe I cannot recall the exact year as when I was appointed to go there. I simply cannot recall the year.
But it is in Chamkalu that you worked as a member of the district committee. We agree upon that, yes?
Yeah.
Yes, it was at Chamkalu. However, allow me to stress that I only worked there for a year.
No problem, I understood that. But before the year you spent at Chamkalu, you spent 6 months in Kompong Tom. Is that so?
I cannot recall how many months I spent in Kompong Thom.
And the region where you met your husband was which region, which district?
Please repeat your question as I do not understand it.
The region where you lived with your parents and the region where you met your husband, it was which district?
I lived with my parents, and after I got married, we remained in the same Chuksach commune, Bara district, Kampong Thom province. And later on, I went to earn a living in rice farming at Chamka Andong. And these are the two locations that I lived, but I cannot recall when I left home for Chamka Andong. I cannot recall that.
Vous avez
When you were answering a question from my colleague of the civil parties, you spoke about the hospitals that existed in Chamkale district, and you explained that there were different levels of hospitals. And of course, I want to repeat correctly what you said, so I will state what you said yesterday a little bit before 3:08 in the afternoon, and you said that the hospital existed at the district level, but that there was also a Sankat hospital, a commune hospital, and we had to treat the patient at the commune level. If the patient's condition worsened, then he was sent to the district hospital from the commune hospital. And if the condition remained critical, then the patient was sent to the province hospital. End of quote, free translation. So my question is, witness, when you arrived at Chamkale, for how long when were the commune hospitals built? For how long were they there in the district when you arrived, these commune hospitals?
Yeah.
I do not have a full grasp of what happened when the hospital was established, because after my arrival, the district and the commune hospitals had already been established. Though I cannot tell you which years they were built.
Sans pré-
Without specifying the year, can you tell us if these hospitals had been built during the Khmer Rouge period or before? Did they exist before the Khmer Rouge regime? That is to say, under Lon Nol. I'm not asking for a specific date. I just want to know under which regime were these hospitals built.
The hospitals were built during the times that I worked there. So when people were recruited or selected to be placed in various cooperatives, that was the time the hospital had been built. But I cannot tell you the year.
So if I understood you well, these hospitals were built during the Khmer Rouge regime. Is that so?
Yeah.
Yes.
Vous nous avez
And you said that you came from a farmer's family and that you lived in Barai district in Kampong Thom. Beyond your stay in Chamkale, so what I wanted to know is that when you got married and during your youth, were there many hospitals in Barai district?
When I was young, and I can tell you that I was young and I did not have any necessary means of transportation. So simply put, I cannot tell you whether hospitals existed here or there, and usually I walked on foot from one location to another, and mainly I spent most of my time assisting my parents in working in a rice field. And only when I was sick, then I was sent to a hospital for treatment.
And do you remember which hospital you were sent to when you were ill, when you were young?
When I was sick, or when my parent was sick, we actually did not really go to the hospital as we believed in superstition, and mainly we sought the help of traditional healers, or we made an offering to the spirit.
And when you tell us that you resorted to traditional medication, were there any traditional practitioners you called upon, or this only happened within your family?
During the regime, we had traditional healers who sold us traditional medicine, or who gave us some tree barks and leaves. And for some wounds, we use the bark from kapot tree to heal the wound. And that's how the peasants treated themselves during the regime, and they rarely attended a hospital.
In my translation, I heard under the regime. Which regime are you speaking about precisely?
If I am not mistaken, I heard you ask me a question as to during which regime I went for treatment at a hospital, and my response was about the regime when I was young. That is when the revolution did not yet exist. And at that time we sought treatment from traditional healers.
Thank you for this clarification. Now I'm going to turn to another topic. I'm going to speak more specifically about the 1 January dam. And you confirmed to my colleague that you understood that the building of this dam was to improve the agricultural situation and to provide more food to the population. And yesterday you indicated a little bit after 2:17 in the afternoon that the dam was to be used by the people living around the dam all the way up to the area of Barai. And you also said yesterday that you traveled often to the dam work site where people from your district were working. So my question is, can you tell us more specifically in which commune the people in your district were working, if you remember that?
I do not want to repeat my responses, as I have spoken quite many times on the first January Dam website. What do you want me to clarify again and again?
គួរតែថាឲ្យ
You should have understood what I have said so far regarding the first January Dam website, and I told you already that I was simply a guest visiting the website, and I was not a supervisor at the first January Dam website. And the first January Dam is located in Kampong Thmo district, and I have repeated this message several times. And what else you want me to say regarding the dam?
Witness, I understand that you're tired. Many people are putting questions to you that may seem repetitive, but I'm asking for clarification, and the reason for that is that the responses that you gave to us were not fully understood, and that's why I'm asking for clarification. Of course, I understood that you were not working there on a permanent basis, that you would go there from time to time. There's no problem about that. And I also understood very clearly that the worksite was in the region of Kampong Thom. But before this court, as many witnesses have come to testify, and we gathered from that the dam site covered several kilometers. So according to the districts and the communes, people could have been working in different communes. So my specific question is to know, you in particular, where you saw, or even if it was rarely, people from your district working, if you could tell us in which commune the people from your district were working, so we could know in which section of the dam site the people from your commune, from your district were working. I don't know if I'm a bit clearer than before here.
Of course, your question is clear. And as I said, the dam is located in Kampong Thmo district, not the Kampong Thom district, because Kampong Thom is a province, not a district. And it runs through several villages, and I cannot tell you which villages the dam runs through. And there were tens of thousands of workers working on the dam work site. So I cannot remember everyone. And I was there as a casual visitor to the site. President, Madame Susan, as a witness, you're obliged to respond to the questions put to you by parties to the case. And if you do not know an answer to a question, please say so, because your response is actually an answer to that question. Because parties have the right to put questions to you, and that is the formal proceedings before this court. Of course, the questions are on the main topic, that is on the dam website, but the questions are not the same, nor repetitive. They might be similar to you, but there are specific points within those questions that the parties want you to respond to.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I understood that you do not remember in which village the section of the worksite you visited was located. And as you spoke about the number of workers, I'd like to get back to that. Yesterday, you said that there were between 20 to 30,000 workers and maybe possibly up to 40,000 people working there. And your son, Kipik Vanak, who was heard document E3/35, French ERN 00367721, Khmer ERN 00340563, English ERN 00346149-50. This is what he said, and well, the question that was put to him was who was in charge of the 1 January dam work sites. His answer was the following: the committee of the Central Zone was the general manager, and his committee was made up of 4 people: my father, Pusrak, Putol, and Puchan. Pusreng, Putong, and Pustol were respectively the chiefs of the 41st section and the 42nd section and the chief of the 43rd section. These 3 chiefs were in charge of gathering workforce in order to build the 1 January dam. According to the plan, each region had to provide 10,000 people to the work site, but concretely speaking, I did not know the exact number of people who were there. The workers worked on a rotation basis. End of quote. So, on the basis of this testimony from your son, we understand that 30,000 people were expected to work on the site. But did you hear about this plan, and does this figure of 30,000 seem closer to reality than the 40,000 you spoke about yesterday?
I think that figure is about right, and yes, I said it's maybe between 30 to 40,000 workers. However, that is my personal estimation, and the correct figure might be best for 30,000 workers.
And when you say that assessment, well, yesterday when you were asked how many people from your district worked on the 1 January dam worksite, you said that you did not know. So under those conditions, on what do you base yourself to tell us that there were 30,000 workers working on the dam, if you're not even sure of the number with regard to your own district? How did you come up with your estimate?
As I have said, my estimation arises from the number of workers selected from each district. And at my district, it was the district committee who maintained the list of workers sent to work at the work site. But I myself did not know the total number of the workers from each commune under the district and from the district itself. I do not have that figure or any recollection of the number.
There's no problem about that, so I will stop bothering you with all of these figures. You said, therefore, that you traveled rarely to the work site, and you said, or at least when you were present, that you did not see any machinery. As I told you, a certain number of witnesses testified before this chamber, and some spoke about machinery, such as witness Au Au Peksoka or Utseng, when he was speaking about the machines, he saw when people fled at the fall of the regime. And there's another person who apparently worked directly with your husband who's called Young Cham. And first of all, does this name ring a bell?
On the forces of our workers at the work site, I already told you about that. Mainly they worked with their manual labor, but as I said earlier, later on heavy machineries were used to aid in the workers at the work site. And I also said during my testimony that I knew some workers there, but I cannot recall their names, and some of them have passed away.
Première précision par rapport.
First clarification regarding the answer you've just given. You said that machines were sent and workers subsequently. Do you remember when the machines arrived in your district?
I cannot recall as to when they were brought in. However, I recall that only at a later stage, when the dam itself already formed its proper shape, then heavy machineries were present at the work site.
Yang
Cham, that you perhaps do not remember, but who was heard in E3/5513, that is a transcript that is answer to question 64. And this was the question that was put to that witness. In the construction of the dam and the first January dam, what were the technical tools used? And her answer was as follows. In my sector, the tools we used were perhaps D4, D7 excavators, concrete mixers, and cranes. These were used to lift the earth. End of quote. My question, therefore, is as follows. In your district, did you see excavators, concrete mixers, and cranes? Would this jog your memory?
From my district, we only had manpower in digging canals or building dams, and there were no heavy machineries involved.
Mais vous avez dit tout à l'heure que
But you said a while ago that at a point in time machines arrived. Do you recall what types of machines were delivered?
Yeah.
Are you referring to the work site at Chomkale?
Oui, de votre site de travail. Sinon,
Yes, I'm referring to your work site. When you talked of machines, were you not talking about your district?
And that is the question that I like to ask you. Because as I said, for digging canal or building dams at Chomkale, only manpower was used.
d'accord. Donc quand vous m'avez parlé,
Very well. So when you talked about machines that were sent later on, Which district were you referring to if it wasn't Chamkalu?
Yeah.
Answer. I am referring to the 1st January dam size. I later saw the heavy machinery there. I do not recall when the machinery arrives at that work site. The machinery was used to assist workers.
Sur un dernier point sur
Just one last point on this part regarding what you were able to observe at the 1st January dam work site. You stated that there may have been hygiene problems because there were flies. My question is as follows. As some witnesses came and testified before this chamber, did you hear of the use of insecticides, the spraying of insecticides to kill those flies?
Yeah.
Answer. I do not know. I do not know about the spraying of insecticides.
Vous avez également évoqué l'eau qui était utilisée.
You also talked about the use of water on the 1st January dam work site. You stated that workers obtain water from water points from the river and so on and so forth. Witness Utseng explained that in some places boiled water was placed at the disposal of workers, specifically to improve the hygiene conditions. Do you know whether that was the case in certain regions?
Answer. Yes, water was boiled in every cooperative for workers to drink. And tree or plant roots were put in that water and boiled for workers to drink and to avoid dysentery or diarrhea. And I do not know about the fact that whether water was boiled at the 1st January work site.
Pour les besoins du procès.
For the record, I was wrong in mentioning the name of the witness we referred to. It was civil party Singh Sovida who talked about it. Mr. President, I want to go into another line of questioning. I do not know whether this is the right time for us to take the afternoon break.
President, thank you. It is now a convenient time for the break. And the chamber will take a short break from now until 5 to 3. Court officer, please facilitate a proper room for this witness and TBO staff. And please invite them back to the courtroom at 5 to 3. The court is